Okay, everybody, I think we're live. Well, happy Friday, everybody. We made it through the week. Man, was it a hot and humid one here in New York. I think the heat wave is supposed to break into tonight and tomorrow, so hopefully we'll have a little bit better streaming environment for tomorrow. But happy Friday, everybody. It is August 5th, 2022. Hope you are all ready for the weekend. But before that, we do have a couple things to talk about tonight on the stream. Now, I think most notably, what's on everybody's mind is the non-farm payrolls that came out today, and talk about an absolute rip-roaring, rip-your-face-off number we got. Payrolls increased 528,000 in July. Now, don't get me wrong, that's good news, right? You know, we're not sociopathic on the channel. When you have a huge beat like that, just to give you some perspective here, the consensus on the street, so all the economists, Dow Jones estimated that there would be about 258,000 new jobs added for July. It turns out they were way off. Labor market is running hot. Payrolls actually increased 528,000, and not only that, you know, if we look at the estimates for the unemployment rate, that actually came at 3.5%, pretty much full employment. Estimates were for about 3.6%. So this brings me back to, you know, a joke we always refer back to on the streams, is that there's two jobs that you could always be wrong and still manage to keep your job. And there's only two jobs that exist in the world, and that is, number one, the weather. If you're a meteorologist or a weatherman, you could always expect to be wrong in your job and still keep your job. But number two is economists. So talk about being way off. Once again, non-farm payrolls rose 528,000 versus the 258,000 that were expected. Also, when we talk about wage growth was up massively. Hourly wage growth jumped about 0.5% for the month, but on a year-over-year basis, it jumped about 5.2%. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds great. 5.2%, people are getting paid more. That's fantastic, which I agree. I want people to make more. I want people to prosper generally, and I want people to be able to move up the ladder in America. But look what the CPI print is. You know, the last CPI print we got was 9.1%, right? So if your wages are up 5.2% year over year, but inflation is up 9.1% year over year, well, we're actually still in the negative. So we're going to talk about what this job number means today. What is the importance of it? Why do we have to care about it? Well, if you look at the futures market now, right before the jobs report, there was about a 90%, I guess the futures traders were pricing in about a 90% probability of a 50 basis point rate hike at the conclusion of the FOMC meeting in September. Right after we got that jobs reading today, they're pricing in a likelihood of about 75 basis points as the rate hike. So if that's the case, that's going to be back-to-back-to-back rate hikes of 75 basis points or higher. Now, I think we'll finish off tonight by talking about some particular industry groups and some particular stocks that are actually looking really good here. As we've been talking about ever since, I would say, January or February, you know, we've been in this really, really harsh bear market for growth. But I think that's turning around. So my exposure to a lot of these enterprise software companies, these SaaS companies, has increased over the past couple weeks, all but significantly. Obviously still managing our risk here. But after earnings that came out yesterday and all throughout the week, obviously whoever was tuned into the stream last night, we took a deep dive in the Datadog's earnings report, in which case they absolutely blew numbers out of the water, beating on both the top and the bottom line, and even adding more customers in that very lucrative $100,000 ARR space, which is a metric we all know we like to pay attention to on the stream. So we'll talk about a lot, we'll cover a lot, but we're also going to relax tonight. We're also going to relax. So let's see who we have in the chat. Hey, the one and only Lady O is joining us. Good to see you, Lady O, is our good moderator from New Jersey. Hopefully you're well. Otto is here, says hey Tom. Sally is here, says hi. Good to see you. Hey, AT4 Nerd, what's up? So I've been talking to AT4 Nerd quite a bit on Instagram, IG DM. So if you guys want to connect, feel free to follow us at Walks Wall Street on IG. The same thing on Twitter if you guys want to connect with me outside of the traditional streaming hours. Samantha J, what's up? Charlie Richardson, good to see everybody. Well, welcome to the weekend. Man, I'm not usually one of those people to say, thank God it's Friday, but I think after the week I had this week, I'm not saying it was a bad week, but let's just say it was an action-packed week. A lot of demanding clients, a lot of negotiation. One piece of anecdotal data I'll give you guys in the chat as it relates to the economy or the business cycle in general. In my personal work life right now, I'm seeing a lot of customers hold back on orders due to economic uncertainty. So a lot of the times when we are planning a very large implementation of whatever products or solutions we're selling these customers, they'll give us a forecast on how many either licenses of software they need every single quarter, because if you're dealing with a large, let's say, pharmaceutical company or a large manufacturer, they plan on hiring new employees, in which case when they do hire those new employees, they need to give their software vendor a forecast of roughly how many employees they'll be hiring per quarter. So once they do the onboarding process, we can then go and help those employees get set up, give them their logins, get them trained on the particular software and the like. I am seeing customers hold back here. Now, it's not that they're canceling orders, okay? It's not that they're canceling my orders full stop. The size and the volume of those orders are a lot smaller. And I think that's normal to see, because if you're a big Fortune 500 company, or if you're an employer in general, what you're seeing right now, especially as we got 2 negative GDP prints, what you're seeing right now is uncertainty. So I think they're trying to hedge and prepare to say, okay, we don't want to outlay a lot of capital. We don't want to hire as many people because we don't know what the economic environment's going to be, which is really making my head scratch, because if you looked at the non-farm payrolls this month, it was on fire. Over 500,000 jobs added in July, absolutely slaughtering analysts' expectations, economists' expectations. So I just wanted to give everybody that little piece of anecdotal information there. I see Steph Wright is here. Welcome, Steph. Hopefully you're doing well on this Friday evening. I see my good friend Vinny Castellano here from Staten Island. Good to see you, Vinny. Western Mass Dave is here. Buy the Book is here. Welcome, Buy the Book. Jonathan Richards is here. Welcome, Jonathan. AT4 Nerd, welcome. Hey, Donald says, first Miami with AK and now New York City with Tom. Loving my Friday night. Yeah, so I was actually just watching Action Kid, his live stream in Miami from the office. I was actually been working down 28th Street recently. So I've spent the past couple days, maybe the last 3 or 4 days, working from 28th Street. As you guys know, we usually tend to start the streams up near 57th Street, right near Billionaires Row. But I've been switching it up. A little bit. Hey, Pizza Man is here. Says, hey, Tom, haven't been on in a while. Glad to catch you tonight. Thanks for being on. Hey, Pizza Man, I appreciate the support. Thank you for joining, and happy Friday to you. Hey, Comic Con Hunter, what is up? Says, hey, Tom, what's up? Welcome, Comic Con Hunter. XOXX Bob is here. The one and only I Revis is here. Says, hello, Tom, and everybody. Jay Noel says, hey, Tom, have you ever traded options? So the answer is yes. But whenever I trade options, very seldom do I speculate in options outright. And what I mean by that is I will very, very seldom, let's just say, buy calls or puts to try to make money if I don't own the underlying stock. One way in which I will utilize options is, let's say if I have a big position in a particular stock and that stock has gone up substantially, and we are now going into a quarterly earnings report, right? And I'm a little bit nervous that if that particular company either misses Wall Street's expectations, or maybe they give forward guidance that's a little bit light, maybe the stock could drop a couple points. So maybe I'll hedge my position by picking up some puts or something like that. But I'm not a real big options guy. The only time I speculate in the options market is if I'm hedging a position, if that makes sense. I've never really had much success, but for anybody in the chat who wants to learn a little bit more about derivatives trading, options trading, I do have a resource for you, which he is really renowned as one of the greatest options traders of all time, and his name is Anthony Saliba. And Anthony Saliba was actually featured in one of the Markets Wizard books. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with the Jack Schwager series of Markets Wizard, but Google Anthony Saliba. I think Anthony Saliba actually just opened up a cryptocurrency or digital assets trading hedge fund in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. But check out Anthony Saliba. What time is it in New York now? I believe it's right around 8:40 at night, 8:40 p.m. Hey, Chris Beeman is here. Welcome, Chris, from Arizona. Good to see you. Well, everybody, look at this beautiful view we got here of the Empire State Building to the left. And if you look at the blue building to the right, that's the One Vanderbilt building. Absolutely fantastic, absolutely beautiful here. Susanna is here. Welcome. Says, what a lovely Friday walk. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Susanna, so much. Appreciate you. Hey, Carlos is Walk the New York Life building, my old stomping grounds. Hey, very nice. Love that. Beautiful neighborhood. So, speaking of where we're going to walk tonight, I did post a poll on my YouTube community page. So I think what I'm going to be doing from here on out, everybody, is I'm going to let the viewers decide where we'll stream. Now, the vast majority of people chose the Staten Island Ferry for where we should stream tonight. But I just realized I have to really make sure I make this train. So tomorrow's stream, we will be streaming from the Staten Island Ferry, taking the ferry to Staten Island, turning around, coming back to Manhattan. So you do not want to miss that stream. I think it's going to be pretty fun. I don't think we've ever streamed before from the Staten Island Ferry. So hopefully the service is good. I mean, we are streaming on Verizon, so hopefully we'll do that. Lady O says, great idea. Lady O, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing well. Hopefully, your week wasn't too hectic. Hopefully you have some good plans for the weekend. I was a little bummed out for a minute because I was checking the weather all day yesterday and it said it was going to downpour rain all weekend, but I just looked at the weather forecast and it doesn't look like it's going to rain at all. So that's good news. Hey, Teresa Diaz is here. Welcome, Teresa. Hopefully you're well. Vinny Castellanos says, come to our place in Staten Island. Hey, what's up? Hey.
Sorry, do I know you from somewhere?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure, but what's going on? How are you? Oh yeah, Walks on Wall Street. Hey, yes, good to see you, man.
I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Oh, Tom.
Tom. My name is Taj.
Oh, nice to see you, man.
You shoot a little live stream right now?
Yeah, so we do like a live show. We walk around New York City and Miami, and we talk about like the financial markets and all that stuff.
Markets in particular. You guys only do like like the Wall Street markets only, or do you guys do like crypto?
Sometimes we talk about crypto. Very seldom, but sometimes we do. Okay. Sometimes, but yeah, that's awesome. Are you?
Do you have like a little? Do you have a card, a business card?
Do I have a business card? Yes. I don't think I have one on me.
Do you know where I can find your live streams?
Yeah, so if you go to YouTube, you could just follow Walks Wall Street, and you'll probably see it. Yeah, Walks on Wall Street. We're on right now, so if you pull up your phone and you go there, you'll probably see it.
Just watch.
Yeah, you can join anytime, man. You're more than welcome. Absolutely, for sure.
Tom, right?
Yeah, Tom. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hey, have a great weekend.
You too.
Absolutely. Have a good one. Thank you. Kyra, good to see you. Welcome. Lady O, welcome. Good to see you. Yeah, Emmanuel says we need water. Well, I did just, I probably gassed about a gallon of water today because the humidity was really cranking. So yeah, just a quick update. We're not going to be doing the Staten Island Ferry tonight, but I promise we will do that tomorrow. So from now on, before the streams, if you go to my YouTube community page,
what you could do is you could actually vote on where we should stream. And I think that's going to be a little bit better, just so maybe the neighborhoods are not as repetitive. Hey, Gregory is here. Says good evening all. Welcome, Gregory. Good to see you as well. Jay Nibs says welcome to Celebrity Life. Hey, Marjorie Graham is here. Welcome. Good to see you. Let me see if I missed anybody. Dan Zhang says, have you thought about getting a market researcher position at either Bloomberg or Reuters? I think you would be a perfect candidate. So I have thought about that, but I think the compensation may not be as high as like enterprise software sales or something like that. And at the end of the day, to be honest, even though we do a live stream where we cover the financial markets and I write the newsletter about the financial markets, I really love software. I really love tech. So if I had to choose between maybe working for a big financial company or the investment bank or a hedge fund or something like that, or working at a big enterprise software company, I think I would probably still choose this software company. I don't know. It's actually a good question. But everybody, we are standing right outside of the Flatiron building. I think this is one of Lady O's favorite stomping grounds here outside of the Italy, which is a Italian grocery store, which is fantastic. Jason Francis is here, says hello Tom and happy Friday to the chat. Welcome Jason, hopefully you are well. Stephanie says Madison Square Park during the day is lovely. Agreed 1,000%. Hopefully, if you guys take a look over here, this is the Flatiron building. Hopefully the scaffolding will be coming down relatively soon, because this scaffolding has been up for about a year now. I remember when we first started doing these live streams, I remember they were just putting the scaffolding up. And I think it's been about maybe a year and a couple months now. So we'll figure it out. Hatim says, you confuse me. I'm in Tunisia, North Africa, and it is Saturday already. I got it. Myra King says Italy is good stuff. Yeah, I like a lot of the pastries there. So if anybody wants to go to Italy, right here on Broadway, 24th, I would recommend a lot of the Italian pastries. They're very nice. Jeff says the nice thing about working in tech sales is you get to interact with so many different types of business people. That's probably, oh guys, check this out. We got the rollerbladers again. This is 2 nights in a row. All right, let's go over and say hi to them. So if you guys weren't here yesterday, we ran into these guys, I think around the same time. Maybe there's like a roller skating meetup in New York, but so unique. Let's go check them out. But I think you're right. I mean, I think that's one of the things I like most about my job is being able to learn about different types of businesses, right? So early on in my tech sales career, my vertical, I was only allowed to sell into healthcare, right? So that was my specific vertical. And I learned a lot about the healthcare industry, right? I learned a lot about HIPAA compliance laws. I learned a lot about regulations, rules, how to make patients' lives better. So even though you're selling software or you're selling a piece of hardware, if you're vertical specific, you'll wind up learning a lot about those specific industries too, which is sort of like the best of both worlds. So I think that's a really good observation. So this is West 24th Street and Broadway, and it seems like there's a big rollerblading meetup. And I wonder how far down these guys go. Oh! Yeah, Western Mass Dave says double whammy on the skates, 2 nights in a row. Good to see you, Dave. You know, this is one of the things I like most about New York too, is you'll just run into random things, like very impromptu. You know, maybe one of these nights, if they're on tomorrow, maybe we'll grab the skateboard and we'll have to join them. Who knows? Google is here. Welcome, Google. Mike Skate TV. Hey, Asmurray6 is Tom. Thanks for the tip on the book Extreme Ownership. Very inspirational. Yeah. Extreme Ownership is a fantastic book. Jocko Willink is the author. I believe he also has a podcast too, so the Jocko podcast, which is absolutely fantastic. Chef Tom is here, says, good night, welcome, Chef Tom. Iris Lewis says they need to go to the park. John Sorley is here, Dr. Longus. Dan Zhang says these people must be all pretty good at rollerblading. Hey, Points Traveler says we need to get you on some blades. Well, we used to do this live stream on the skateboard, but we've definitely been slacking on the skateboard for a while. One of the reasons, to be totally transparent, haven't been doing the skateboarding as of late is we started this channel during the pandemic. Does anybody remember that? And the streets, like if you go back on my channel and look at some of the first live streams we ever did, there was virtually no cars on the street. Okay, so we would just barrel down at 15 miles an hour on the skateboard. But now there's a lot of traffic, and I'm sort of, as the channel's grown, reading the chat, going through the lesson plan, and skateboarding may not be the safest thing, but hey, we'll bring it back. We'll do it. No worries. Lady O says you should stream your old skateboarding vlogs. I know. I should restream them. That's a good idea, Lady O. Lady O, you know what we may do one night? We may do the skateboarding live stream, but I'll just set the expectation at the beginning of the live stream that I can't really look at the chat too much, because when we would do those live streams, we wouldn't have as many people now. I mean, the channel just has grown beyond my expectations. But tonight we're going to be walking up Broadway. I want to go to Columbus Circle again. I know if anybody voted on the channel, we were supposed to go to the Staten Island Ferry tonight. That will be tomorrow. But for tonight, we're going to be talking about the massive jobs number we got today. So what is everybody's thoughts on the non-farm payrolls number we got today? Coming in over 500,000 jobs added in the U.S. economy in July. And if we think about what economists were expecting, they were expecting about 250,000 jobs, right? I think a little less than 250,000 jobs. We came in right at 500,000, a little bit more than 500,000. So absolutely ripped its face off there. So here's what I'm a little bit concerned about, and I definitely want your guys' input. And here's what I mean by that. So I called my friend. Who works at a bank. We went to college together, and I was like, "What do you think about these payroll numbers?" And he's like, "Well, I think we're going to revert back to an environment in the market where good news is bad news and bad news is good news." Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, that doesn't make any sense at all. So what I mean by that is the market seems to be very dependent on the Federal Reserve. And Fed Chair Jerome Powell is looking at a couple of things. Obviously, they're looking at inflationary pressures, right? They're looking to see if inflation comes down. They're looking to see if that core CPI will come down. But even besides that, one of the key metrics that they look at is the jobs numbers. Because as you have jobs being added to the economy, that means the labor market is strong. And when the labor market is strong, usually, and this confirmed it by the report today, usually you will have a massive increase in wages. So we got the wage numbers out as well today, and year over year was about a 5.2% increase. Now, obviously not enough to beat inflation, but still those wage pressures add towards inflation. So the point I'm trying to get at here is as we get good economic news that the labor market's running hot, well, the Fed's job is to cool down the economy to kill off inflation. So that means they're probably going to raise interest rates even more. And what happens when you raise interest rates? Well, generally speaking, that is not good for the stock market, especially those very high beta, high growth stocks. So if you look at the futures market today, before the jobs numbers were released, there was about a 95% certainty that the Fed would raise interest rates about 50 basis points at the conclusion of the FOMC meeting in September. Now, after we got those jobs numbers out, which absolutely blew the doors off of this place, futures traders were pricing in a 75 basis point rate hike again in September. So that would be the first time, I think ever, we would have back-to-back 75 basis point rate hikes from the Federal Reserve. And that could definitely put pressure on some of the higher tech stocks who have the vast majority of their earnings that are priced in the future. So what do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about the notion that good news, or we could potentially be reverting back to an environment where good news is perceived as bad news because the Federal Reserve is probably going to raise interest rates and cool the economy even further? And then if we get bad jobs reports, well, that means the Federal Reserve is probably going to ease up on those interest rate hikes, in which case, maybe that would allow for valuations to get back to the craziness in which they once were. Mike C says one piece of economic data raises rates another 55 basis points, says Mike C. Gregory says the gelato place is hopping tonight. It is. I've never been here, but every time we pass it on the stream, without question, there's always a line. So if you guys want to come here by yourself, it's 26th Street, so West 26th Street, and Broadway. Dr. Longus is here, says sound spot on. Good to see you, Dr. Longus. Hey, Melee is here, says good evening from Scranton, Pennsylvania. Welcome, everybody. Western Mass Dave says very interesting, Tom. We are in uncertain times for sure. Marjorie says, Tom, what about checking out Minette Street and the West Village? We may do that tomorrow. We may do the West Village tomorrow because tomorrow we have to walk all the way to the Staten Island Ferry. So we definitely will do that. I see my good moderator, Sunshine After Rain, is here. Welcome, Sunshine. Hope you're doing good. Kaka Silva is here. Welcome. NMB 045 says, Tom, the Fed will probably just look at the country jobs reports before considering raising rates. Canada lost 30,000 jobs. So here's something. So NMB 045. Here's where my head is twisting a little bit, and maybe you guys could help me, walk me through this. Jobless claims also came in, which first-time unemployment claims, which means people that are either laid off, lost their job, and they're applying for unemployment. Those numbers actually came in hotter than expected earlier this week. But also, I don't know what's happening here, but also today, non-farm payrolls came in hotter than expected. So what that tells me is that the labor market is still hot, where the people who are getting laid off are still being absorbed into the marketplace. Now, another thing to look for that's concerning is the labor force participation rate. So even though right now in the United States, I don't know what these guys are doing, I don't know what this guy's doing. So even though right now in the United States, unemployment is literally at record lows, you could pretty much call it full employment, the labor force participation rate is still quite depressed and is not yet recovered from the pandemic. So the labor force participation rate, I think, is a little bit more important to look at than the traditional unemployment rate. So what I conclude is that the pandemic has fundamentally changed the game in the economic environment. And what I mean by that is it's changed the way people think about work. It's changed the way people work or how they work. And I think it's probably forced a lot of people, maybe not forced, but encouraged a lot of people to start their own thing or to start their own jobs. Well, I don't think I've ever been to this place before. Here, I'll show you guys the menu. So this place looks like it just opened here. Hey, British Gray says the unemployment rate right now is 3.6%. I think it may be a little bit under 3.6%, right? But yeah, this place looks really cool. Looks like a very interesting place. Maybe we'll have to check it out one day. But British Gray, good to see you. Manthony 18th is a cool place, Tom. Yeah, it looks, I mean, it's a Friday night in New York. I'm seeing a lot of new places opened up. You know, right here on Broadway, there was a lot of vacant spots, but here's the good news. We're seeing a lot of people or a lot of businesses actually sign leases to come in. Like we got this pizza place here. This was another unit that was completely vacant. Everything was blown out from the pandemic. But it seems like they're actually opening more new establishments, which is good, right? I think that's what we want to see. If you guys go back to my earlier streams during the pandemic, pretty much all the entire Broadway looked like this. Everything closed. So slowly but surely, you know, businesses are coming back. And I think that's good to see. I think that's good to see. We have our friends at the FDNY here. Love the FDNY. Big shout out to all of our firefighters here. Hey, Robert is here. This is Tom. Do you prefer supply side or demand side economics? I try to weigh them evenly. Because I think here's the problem with me, and I've noticed this about myself early on, and I'm glad that I sort of caught that. I have the type of personality where I suffer from confirmation bias. And I try to always put myself in the check. So, and I think that has to do with social media, right? Because I'm really, really big on FinTwit, on financial Twitter. I love, you know, researching things and seeing what other fund managers have to say. But the problem with that is Twitter's algorithm is very good at serving you up exactly what you want to hear, right? So if I have a theory on the economy, or if I have a specific thesis on a particular stock, and I'm posting about that online, the algorithm is just going to feed me stuff that feeds my bias. Does that make sense? So I think I've gotten a little bit better over the years with like catching myself. I'm like, okay, I'm just totally indoctrinated in confirmation bias here. So I try to weigh it evenly. So here's another restaurant, everybody, that opened. It looks like this just opened. I'm really, really surprised because everything on Broadway, and the people who've been watching this stream for a long time could back me up here. Everything after 9 p.m. used to look like this, all shut down. And now, check out this restaurant. There's not a table that's empty here. I mean, let me know if my eyes are deceiving me, but there's not a table in this restaurant here that's empty. So that begs the question, are we in a recession? Or does it matter? Wow, look at this. Very unique looking bar here, everybody. What do you guys think about this spot? Let me see if I can get the name for you guys. Hey, Sunshine After Rain is here. Welcome, Sunshine. Always a pleasure. Wow, so if you eat in this restaurant, you sit at the bar, check out the view you got. I mean, that's $1 million view right now. Yeah, Myra King says, what is the restaurant? Let me stand across the street so you guys can see the sign. Give me a minute. Maybe photos from around New York or something could, yeah, so I would just Google this, guys. And I'm not even gonna try to pronounce it, but Zaytinya. And this is on Broadway and West 28th Street. It looks like it just opened. Looks like a pretty cool spot too. Hey, Liz is here, says we have that in DC. Welcome, Liz. Bertha B says, I'd love to go to that restaurant for a nice supper. I would too. Yeah, because if you sit at the bar here, check this out. If you grab a nice bar seat, look at the view you're gonna get as you're eating a meal. That's $1 million view right there, the Empire State Building. Would you agree? So Jason says, Tom, it's a Mediterranean restaurant. Love Mediterranean. Teresa Diaz, welcome. Lemonades as well. Everyone is out eating, enjoying, and ready for the weekend. I know I'm ready for the weekend, Lemonade. I had a crazy week. Let's just call it that. Crazy week. Crazy week. Hey, Paul Tricky says, hey, Tom, how's it going tonight? Things are going good. Things are going good. We are going to be checking out Midtown Manhattan. Tomorrow we will be downtown. We're going to take a Staten Island ferry ride. I think that'll be cool content for the stream. I was on the Staten Island ferry for the first time in a long time, probably about 2 weeks ago. and the views are insanity from there. So if you're coming to New York City and you're a tourist and you're trying to, stay within budget, oh my God. I mean, just take the Staten Island ferry and you can see the best views in New York City for free. I'll give you guys one more shot of the Empire from here. Fantastic. Hey, Tea Cakes Janie says, something's in the air. Everybody I know had a crazy week. Well, I'll tell you guys why. So now that we have more people in the chat, I'll tell you guys why I had a little bit of a crazy week. And it does tie into the conversation that we're having today, which is the massive face-ripping gangbusters report from the non-farm payrolls coming in much, much, much higher than expected. So, as you know, I've been closing finally, a lot of the deals that I've been working on, I would say probably for the past 3 or 4 quarters, which is almost a year, yes. Because usually as you're selling into the enterprise, if you think about Fortune 100, Fortune 1000, Fortune 500, the deal cycles tend to be very, very long. So I closed some deals, but here's the problem. A lot of my customers are not canceling their orders. They're revising their estimates for their software licenses. So I'll give you an example. There's a pharmaceutical company that I'm working with. We're going to do a massive deployment for like an endpoint security product, which is like an MDM. Anyway, so we were planning on rolling out about 600 licenses per quarter until we get to 3,000 licenses. So it's going to be a multi-year deployment, right? It's going to take multiple years to deploy. Now they're revising their forecast, which is fine. You got to do the right thing by the customer. Whatever the customer asks, you do. But they're citing that there's some potential uncertainty in their hiring. So they're like, we may cut back 25% of our hiring each quarter, just so we could see how the economy plays out. So when I got the news, wow, check out the Empire State Building from here. When I got the news today of the non-farm payrolls coming in at 528,000, when economists were originally forecasting about a little bit less than 250,000, I was like, okay, something is not adding up here. So the US economy is adding jobs. Earlier in the week, we got a higher than normal first-time unemployment claims, which means the people who are getting laid off and losing their jobs is going up. But the economy's, or the job market is still running white hot. Businesses still have a very, very hard time hiring people, so the people who are getting laid off are being absorbed into the market, which is a good thing, right? I think that we could all say as Americans, it breaks my heart when anybody loses a job. I think we could all agree here unanimously. It doesn't matter what party you're on. If you get laid off, it's horrible. It's a terrible feeling. But the good news is that it seems to be that if you get laid off, you could probably find another job within the next, I would say, 4 to 6 months, just based upon those payroll numbers alone. So going back to a little piece of anecdotal data here that I was talking about with my particular customers, even though the deals are closing, the deal size is now a lot smaller than I had originally anticipated, which is a little bit of a bummer, right? But at the end of the day, you have to grant your customer's request, and they're like, we're probably going to cut back on hiring by about 25% per quarter. So, and these are some of the largest pharmaceutical companies. This particular customer I'm talking about. James Brumley says more like 2 jobs and do like Instacart and taxi on the side, so no sleep for everyone. Hey, Jay is here. Welcome, Jay. Good to see you. Prospect Basements' current temp in New York City is 82 degrees Fahrenheit and 61% humidity. It definitely feels like it. I was roasting today. Hey, Western Mass Dave says, Tom, good day for Dutch Brothers Coffee. Yeah, and it was a good day for Atlassian too. So we were talking about Atlassian. Atlassian ripped faces off today, I think up 16% on absolute thunder volume. And that's the type of behavior you want to see from a stock that reported fantastic earnings. So Atlassian, I think, beating on both the top and the bottom line. But we talked about that last night on the stream, as well as Datadog during our stream for the quarterly earnings report. Kathy Lyons is here, says thank you for streaming tonight, Tom. Thank you for being here, Kathy. Hopefully you guys have some fantastic plans for the weekend. Brad's Brain says I'll be looking for a new job in Houston the next couple of months. That's the plan anyway. So Brad, what industry, if you don't mind me asking? You could have told me already, but it just may have slipped my mind, but what sort of industry are you looking for the job? Jason Francis is here, says looks awesome. Welcome, Jason. So check out all the garbage here on the sidewalk. Jay Nibs says, how do part-time jobs affect the labor market? How do part-time jobs affect the labor market in terms of the number itself, or in terms of just like what people want to do? Here's a little bit of anecdotal data based upon what you said about how do part-time jobs affect the labor market. Some of the small business owners that I know on Long Island, what they tell me is that they'd rather hire part-time employees. So here's essentially the claim. And again, this is anecdotal data, so don't take this as everybody. So don't take this at face value. But essentially here's the claim. Some businesses would rather hire 2 or 3 part-time workers as opposed to 1 full-time employee due to the different taxes and benefits they would have to pay to that employee. Has anybody else heard that? I'm obviously not going to name the company on Long Island, but I had a couple people tell me that. Yeah, so Liz, exactly. What Liz said is, part-time equals no health insurance. So again, I don't want to spark a big discussion on healthcare, but I would say there are businesses out there that try to keep the hours like 25 hours a week. But if you look at the labor market as a whole, and again, if you read the Institute for Supply Management PMI reports, especially in the service sector, it's really, really difficult for employees or employers to hire employees right now. And here's the additional thing we were talking about the other night on the stream. When a company does hire employees, it's so difficult for them to retain their employees, right? So that is considered the churn rate. And we were talking about that as well. So a lot of the customers that I consult with in the home healthcare space, that's their main problem, right? They're like, number 1, Tom, we can't hire enough people. And number 2, when we do hire these people, they quit within 6 months. So, wow, check this out, everybody. So if you look all the way down here, you'll be able to see the World Trade Center. Wow, beautiful. Jay says, hey Tom, to me it seems like the big corporations want to go back to the Gilded Age where the employees make no money and they make it all, says Jay. Interesting. James Brumley says, but the kicker is you have to actually work your hours, says James Brumley. I think in the age of technology, in the age of the internet, and I think this is probably why the labor force participation rate is still a little bit low. I think a lot of people do freelance work and make a pretty decent living doing that. Hey, friend is here, says, hello Tom, your channel is fantastic. Hello from Ecuador. Well, welcome to all of our Ecuadorian viewers. Hopefully you guys are doing well on this Friday night. Hey, NBA Elias says, hey Tom, how are you? I hope you had a good week. NBA Elias, I did have a good week. Unfortunately, a lot of my customers are reducing the size. I'm not sure if you just hopped on, but a lot of my customers are reducing the sizes of their orders. And I guess I'll quickly explain it again for some of the people who are just joining. But essentially, a lot of times, it's easiest to change to a different piece of software as you're onboarding new employees, right? Because essentially there's a thing that's called in the industry, it's called the pain to change. So let's say if you're running on a particular, let's just use a CRM tool as an example. Let's say you're using Zoho right now as your CRM, and you have 1,000 employees. And you're like, you know what, Zoho is really not doing everything that we want. We're gonna go migrate over to Salesforce because they have, you know, more API integrations to prospecting tools. We wanna use ZoomInfo and Marketo or whatever the reason is. As you do that migration, those existing 1,000 employees, it's gonna make their lives miserable for like the first month, right? Because an employee, they just wanna work, which I understand, they just wanna come to work and they don't like any change. But the moment you say, okay, you have to do a training on how to use Salesforce, you have to now migrate over all your leads, and maybe they're not gonna come over, you have to add new username and passwords, you have to add your username and password to Okta. You know, it makes employees really disgruntled. So a lot of times what they do is they say, okay, as we hire the newcomers, that's when we're gonna start the software deployment. So long story short, as I was saying before, the forecast was roughly 600 to 800 new employees per quarter, which is pretty decent. I was on conference calls, they're like, hey, sorry to tell you, after running through the financials, after talking with the board, we're gonna reduce our orders about 25%. What can you do? Meaning they're probably not gonna, they're still gonna hire people, but they may just not hire as many people per quarter, but we'll see. Which, again, blows my mind because what did we just find out this morning? The non-farm payroll numbers took people's faces off today, which is, coming in at, what is this guy doing? Oh, let me try to get away from this guy. Coming in at about 520,000. So here are at Herald Square, everybody. 34th Street, Macy's, beautiful. Hey, Kilo Whiskey Juliet is here. This is MTA customer service. Just switched from Oracle to Salesforce CRM last month, and we all hated it in the office. Yeah, so point, there we go, exhibit A, right? Exhibit A. So, as you're doing those transitions, right, there's salespeople or engineers on the back end that deal with a lot of blowback, trust me. But which is normal, right? That's our job, is to make sure the migrations and the integrations go smoothly, right? So I think the best thing to do, and so here's a little bit of a sales tip for anybody who's in software sales or enterprise software sales. I notice a lot of competitors or a lot of very novice sales reps, they set very unrealistic expectations with their customers, and here's what I mean by that. They say, oh, we have the best industry-leading solutions engineers, so when you go through your migration, you're not going to have any issues. Your employees are it's going to be smooth. You're going to have no issues. I say up front, look, I lay out the groundwork. I'm like, if you want to work with us, it needs to be a partnership. And here's what I mean. There's going to be roadblocks. There's going to be system outages. There's going to be things that go wrong during this deployment that I want to be upfront with you about. And if something goes wrong, I need your company's buy-in to work with us as a collective to fix what we need to fix. Because you're an organization of 30,000 employees. You're implementing a new piece of software. We need to be realistic here, and I think once we set those realistic expectations to say, look, it's not going to go smoothly. There's going to be some hiccups, but here's the thing. Once we acknowledge that, then we can all work together and say, look, we're going through a new process. It's probably going to take 2 or 3 months to work out the kinks, but once we get on the other side, it's gonna be better. And I think if you set those expectations with the customer, when something goes wrong, it's not a fire drill, right? But if you unethically sell something and say, hey, this installation is gonna go smooth as day, there's gonna be no issues, well, the moment there's an issue, the customer's gonna flip out on you and probably cancel their service. So always set realistic expectations. And even if you get the objection where they say, oh, well, we just got off the phone with your competitor and they said there's gonna be no issues. Well, usually the way I counter that and reframe the sale is say, I've been selling this software for 7 years. I have never been a part of an implementation that went 100% smooth. And I want you to think back to the last time your IT department implemented a piece of software, implemented a new piece of hardware. Did it ever go 100% smooth? It'll probably go maybe 75% smooth. But I think it's appropriate to be realistic, and I'm always going to set realistic expectations. So that has closed more deals for me than anything, because that puts the customer's guard down. It's like, wow, this sales guy is telling me things aren't going to go 100% smooth, right? So it's just all about building that trust. Anyway, I'll stop rambling. So here we are, 35th Street, Herald Square, another beautiful view of the Empire State Building, as we are standing right outside of the very famous Macy's here. AT4 nerds, as Tom, we had that problem with Process Unity. They promised all this stuff to help us, and their dev team was zero help, and we had so many outages, we had to cancel our contract after 3 years. Yeah, Exhibit A. I've seen this so many times, and I would rather not sell the deal. Like, I've been on big calls where back in the day, my sales manager's there, the VP of sales at the company, and we're going through like initial closing talks with the customer, and I had to stop the conversation. I'm like, hold on, I don't feel comfortable here. I just have to set appropriate expectations. If Okta is promising you this, I can guarantee you we can't promise that. I like to set realistic expectations, because what's going to happen here is, as you go through this migration process, if your engineering team is not involved, it's not going to work. Your engineering team is going to need to work double time for at least 2 months for this implementation to go smoothly. If we don't have mutual buy-in here, I would rather walk away from this deal. And yes, I would make a lot of money on this deal. I want your business, but I'm not going to do it in a way where it's going to be combative. We need full agreement here. And if you take that stance and you don't sort of waver from that, you may get blowback from managers, but that closes more deals than anything, right? You're essentially disqualifying your own customer. You can tell them in the meeting, we don't want to do the deal. Because if they're promising you this, if Salesforce is promising you this, if Oracle's promising you this, and they're saying you're going to have no outages, BS. There's going to be outages. But that's why we need to work together to get through that. So, Mike sees as if only all salespeople were this ethical. So I think I'm not necessarily sure it comes down to their being unethical. I think it's just they're inexperienced. You know, because a lot of the times sales is a revolving door, even at software companies. So if you're inexperienced, you know, if you're calculating how much money you're going to make on this sale, you're like, oh my God, if I lose this deal, I'm not going to make the 20 grand or the 30 grand. It's all right. Don't worry about the 20 grand. Worry about doing the right thing, because if you do the right thing and you close the deal, not only are you going to make the 30 grand, but for the life of that customer, the referral business is probably going to feed your family for generations. You know, and that may make your managers, your VPs, pretty upset, right? Because they're all about the numbers. But trust me, I've been through deployments and migrations that have been total nightmares, where there was screaming matches over the conference call where they're like, I'm never going to use your company again. You guys suck. Your engineers suck. It's just bad. So, again, my piece of my 2 cents there. Oh, I thought we were passing Joe's. You know, I think Shot by Scott. So Shot by Scott is a photographer based out of Miami, Florida. He's a good friend of the stream. I think he's a moderator on our stream too. Joe's Pizza is going to be opening in Wynwood, Miami. So once we get back to Miami, maybe we'll have to do a Wynwood stream and take a look at Joe's. So Joe's is a very, very famous pizza place here. Dan Zhang says, gain the trust of your clients and earn that long-term relationship. Agreed, Dan, welcome. Liz is here, says, my brother sells software too, and says the same exact thing. You're two honest, good people. And at the end of the day, Liz, like, you don't want those headaches, trust me. Especially if you're selling enterprise level, right? Because think about it, if you're selling a multinational company and there's an outage in Korea, well, guess who they're going to be calling when you're sleeping at 2 o'clock in the morning? Okay, but if you set the expectation, say, look, if there's an outage, let's put the appropriate systems in place. Here's the people who you call. We have to allocate more of our engineers. And the biggest failure is over-promising on what we can do with like API integrations and things like that. That's been the biggest nightmare for sure. Hey, AT4 Nerds says, I'll join the Winwood live stream in person. Dude, let's do it. I'm down. Lydia Silva says the image does not focus. I've been having some issues with the camera. Let me see if I can fix it. Mike C says, you would think a seasoned customer would see through over-promising salespeople. Well, here's why I think they don't. Here's why in many cases I think they don't. Because, again, as you're selling up the stack, let's say if like it's a big enterprise company, the IT departments half the time don't even want to, they just want to continue doing their job how they've always done it. So they're gonna listen and get sold on the people that are saying, oh, you guys aren't gonna have to do any work. It's gonna be hands off. That's what they wanna hear, right? So they buy into this narrative that, oh, it's gonna be hands off, there's gonna be no big deal. So it's a harder sale to get the buy-in from the customer to say, no, it's not hands off. We need your engineers to work with our engineers because there's gonna be bugs, there's gonna be problems with API integration, things like that. So I think it's all about people not wanting to add extra work on their plate, which is totally respectable, totally respectable, but who knows? All right, everybody, so this is 39th Street. AT4 Nerds says, oh my God, you hit the nail on the head. They all promise seamless API integration and can't even handle nightly batch uploads. That is like, because, I mean, I don't know. I think it's a lot of salespeople also, maybe they're not as technical. So I think if, and again, I think I'm overstating that the vast majority of salespeople do this. The vast majority of salespeople do not do this. But there are salespeople in every company that do this, and they're probably not gonna last very long. And they're only making life harder on themselves, trust me. SME Media says setting expectations is great, but it is also great that you talk about teamwork too. Oh, absolutely. Because the thing is, SME Media, to your point, if there's an outage or something, or oftentimes what we'll do is we'll have to gain access to their employee database, so we have to sign a bunch of NDAs and things like that, and we need their availability to do that. So if they're not responsive, a lot of the times the customer is at fault too, okay? I've seen this many times. Because if my engineering team needs something, we need the answers quick, okay? And if we don't get the answers quick, what's gonna happen is there's gonna be delays. And when there's delays, your employees, your frontline salespeople are gonna get impacted, and then they're gonna be like, oh, it's, you know, XYZ company. I knew we should have never went with them. Well, no, we set expectations with you up front to say, look, we needed your expertise. Wow, look at the line at Joe's. And we needed your assistance, but you never got that. So it needs to be, you know, a team effort here. So here it is, everybody. Joe's Pizza since 1975. Hey, San Miguel is here. Welcome, San Miguel. Long time no see indeed, my friend. Hopefully you're doing good. So check out the line for Joe's. I think the pizza place is a little bit overrated, but at the end of the day, it's a decent spot. But they are moving to Wynwood. I shouldn't say moving. They're going to open up an additional location in Wynwood, Miami. So that's going to be awesome. Hey, Gregory is here. Welcome, Gregory. Silvio is here. Says welcome from Brazil. Love that. Rebel Poets is Tom. I was at MoMA today. Got Adele's Halal, and then Times Square. New York City is getting a bit of the grungy feel again. Rebel Poet, what's up? That actually sounds like a pretty picture-perfect New York City day, doesn't it? Justin says it's downtown of New York because much of the building and... All right. Alan O. Good to see you, Alan O. AT Popcorn says Bleecker Joe's is better than this one in my honest opinion. I'm actually not like a huge fan of Joe's, to be quite honest. I think there's many other pizza spots in New York that are way better. But here's where they dropped the ball on New Year's. Right here. MN is here. Welcome, MN. So it was a good week in the markets today. I mean, it was a good week in the markets this week. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, the NASDAQ, and the S&P 500 all rallying. And earnings actually came in pretty good. As the week went on, as the week progressed, we did a lot of deep dives on companies' earnings reports that we tend to follow here on the stream. Number one being Datadog. They reported earnings yesterday after the bell, beating on both the top and the bottom line. Atlassian, which is a company we talk about, and it was actually a little bit of a fun fact, that was my biggest winner ever. Atlassian, I've pretty much owned it since IPO. I no longer own it, but beating on both the top and the bottom line and raising guidance for the next quarter. Well, they technically didn't raise guidance, but they're forecasting very, very strong new customer acquisition. Atlassian stock popped 16% after hours and rallied on thunderous volume throughout the day to close the week up almost 20%. Talk about a rip rally on Wall Street. Rebel Poet says, I haven't gone to DeFara Pizza yet. So DeFara Pizza is by far the best pizza place in New York. Now, you're going to have to travel because it's in Brooklyn, New York. And I always used to go to DeFara Pizza when I would either visit my friends at Brooklyn College or whenever we would play soccer games against Brooklyn College, we'd always walk or take the train to DeFara. It's a very good place. Hey, Yogi is here. Welcome, Yogi. Good to see you. Hey, Skylar Myers says, hey, Tom, Lincoln Center has some really nice activities happening in the evening. You might enjoy a walk through there sometime. You know, Skylar, we may do that tonight. Because I did post on the YouTube community page. You guys could actually vote where we stream from. We were supposed to go to the Staten Island Ferry tonight, but I just can't make it, unfortunately. So I think tonight we're going to make our way up towards Columbus Circle and Lincoln Center, so we'll head over there. But we're standing right under the Bank of America Tower here. And right to the south of me is Salesforce Tower. Speaking of Salesforce, ticker symbol CRM. They specialize in customer relationship management software, but they also closed their acquisition of Slack, which is a competitor with Microsoft Teams, like a workforce collaboration tool. Hey, Patrick Schultz says, hey, how are you? What's up, Patrick? Welcome. Mr. McLaughlin says, hello from Illinois. Good to see you. A lot of viewers from Illinois, a lot of Chicago and Illinois generally. You know, we did have some breaking news at the close yesterday when it relates to BlackRock. So BlackRock has chosen Coinbase as their institutional onboarding platform for their institutional clients. Now, we went over this yesterday, but in general, I think that in order for, I would say, the broader cryptocurrency ecosystem to be taken seriously, you need traditional infrastructure that's at the institutional level. And that's number one. And number two, you need clear regulation from the SEC, because until we have clear regulation from the Securities and Exchange Commission, I think it's going to be very, very difficult to get real institutions to get any allocation to, let's say, Bitcoin or Ethereum or the like. Now, there are already hedge funds that trade this stuff, but when I'm talking about institutions, I really mean like the sovereign wealth funds, right? The people who are managing trillions of dollars. And they are not in yet. And I think the only way they will be able to get an allocation is to, number one, have clear and concise regulatory direction from the SEC, from our pal Gary Gensler. And number two, things like we just saw yesterday with BlackRock partnering with Coinbase to allow custody of Bitcoin and also Bitcoin trading. And I think they're following in the steps from Fidelity. So very good news breaking yesterday on Wall Street. Daryl says, Tom, there's a Salesforce building in Chicago as well. Wow, I didn't know that. Well, I mean, probably obviously, right? Daryl, have you ever been to San Francisco and saw the Salesforce Tower? That's on my bucket list. I want to, never been to San Francisco. You know, you always hear not too favorable things about San Francisco, which is unfortunate, but I don't know, I still want to go. I still want to go and check out Salesforce Tower. Anybody in the chat tonight from San Francisco? Anyway, I want to go. So here we are in Bryant Park. Beautiful night.
So, this dude though.
Jogging with Jim is here, says I agree. Good to see you jogging with Jim. Hey, Zabatata, welcome.
Trying to be a person who's still kind of thinking.
San Miguel says, people say San Francisco has really nice weather. I think it's quite moderate all year round, isn't it? I think San Francisco has some of the best weather in the country, I think that's San Diego. I think San Diego, California is rather popular too. You know, all this talk about people migrating away from California to Texas and states like Florida, even though that's true, I was speaking to a realtor in California, and he says it's a little bit more broad-based and maybe a little bit more nuanced than that. I think you're seeing people migrate away from more expensive cities in California and to places like San Diego. And a little bit more affordable places. So I wouldn't say everybody's leaving California. I think they're probably just, you know, reorganizing where they live, right? Not everybody has to live in Silicon Valley. Not everybody has to live, oh my God, look at that rat. Right there. Yikes. Big yikes. Not everybody has to live in San Francisco, so we'll see. Hey, Walking Minnesota says, Tom, I lived in San Francisco for years. Beautiful city, unfortunately dirty and stinky, but great city with great people, says Walking Minnesota. Well, thank you for that input. Appreciate the input, Walking with Minnesota, and happy Friday to you, by the way. What do you guys think about this view of the empire? I'd say, I don't know, I'm going to give it like a 9.3. I'm going to go with the 9.3. What do you guys think? Roberts is almost no humidity in San Francisco as well. That is true. That's a big plus. You know, usually I don't mind the humidity, hence why I also have a place in Miami. But New York City can be very, very humid. And I think when it's humid in Manhattan, it feels more humid than Miami. Would anybody agree with that? I don't know, maybe it's just me, because oftentimes when you're in Miami, you have that nice sea breeze, but if you're in Midtown Manhattan, it gets absolutely cranking. Yeah, Ruby's like 9.3 is fair. That's fair. Yeah, Rebel Poet 71 says today was seriously humid. Today was tough. Today was tough, but it was a beautiful day. It's going to be a beautiful weekend. You know, I think at the beginning of the stream, I was talking about how it was supposed to rain tonight. It was supposed to downpour tonight and all weekend, but after looking at the most updated weather report, it looks like it's going to be a fantastic weekend, which is good. Martin says, I would say Tom loves the Empire State Building. Absolutely. Because I think if you revert back to the history of the empire and just how it was built, that is like the classic American overcoming adversity through the worst times to persevere, right? Built during the Great Depression, built under budget, built in record time. I mean, it's just like a staple of American capitalism, New York icon of working hard. So I think that's why I like it. I think that's why it resonates with me. And also, it's a pretty decent looking building. I mean, it's a good looking building. Can't say that about a lot of other buildings, but. So across the way here is Bank of China, sitting right next to Salesforce Tower, as we're talking about Salesforce here. You can always tell it's Salesforce Tower because they always have the spotlight on the building here. John Garza is here, welcome. Robert is like Art Deco is nice, agreed. Hey, Lodi says, what's the weather like in early September? That's when my trip is. So September is usually a hit or miss. September is sometimes it's like really, really hot. And the reason why I say that is because that was right around when our preseason would be. So when I played soccer during my college days, our preseason would be like late August, early September. And there were some days in September that were like in the 90s. Obviously, the earlier you are in September, the less crazy, ridiculous hot it is. But I've noticed something, and let me know, I want your guys' feedback here in the chat. Have you guys, like seriously, I've noticed that summer is lasting longer in the year, and winter is like pushed back all the way into May. I've noticed that, it's nuts. Like, for example, 2 years ago here, I think it may have been 3 years ago, during Thanksgiving, it was like 67 degrees on Thanksgiving Day here. And sometimes, I think in 2013, I think if you guys look it up, I think it was in the 70s on Christmas Eve. But in the summer, like May 25th is my birthday, and it's usually really, really hot. When I was a kid, I always remember it being ridiculously hot on my birthday. But now it's like raining and cloudy and nasty most times. I don't know, I feel like the seasons are just being pushed back. Maybe it's just me. Hey, 3T3 says, I'll be in New York City over 9/11 weekend. Very nice. Lodi says, I'm from Orlando, so the heat should be okay. All right, so you're used to it. I think you'll be all right. Ruby says, I went last September and it was raining and warm. Yeah, Tub of Popcorn says, great username, by the way, on YouTube. Great YouTube username, Tub of Popcorn. Says the Bryant Park is beautiful during the holiday season, like Christmas and stuff like that. Hey, Western Mass Dave says, Tom, that is a great observation. I was responsible for above ground pools in the Northeast at my job, and the seasons were pushed back from previous years as long as 10 years ago. Wow. So you noticed a change in buying behavior, is what you're saying, right, Dave? I would agree with that. You know what I think we might do tonight, everybody, as we make our way to Columbus Circle? Let's take a quick lap around Grand Central Station. It's Friday night. We can do whatever we want. We worked hard this week. We covered a lot on the streams. So what do you guys think? Do you want to just take a quick lap around Grand Central? What do you think? You check on the Mighty Bull. Lucratives has come to Newport. Maybe. Hey, Adrian says, I noticed it too, and I'm from the tropics in Jamaica. Wow. Our rainy season seems to be pushed back. So you're seeing it all the way there in Jamaica. Well, thank you for watching the stream from Jamaica, by the way. Awesome. Hopefully you're enjoying. Buy the book says yes. Lennox says yes, let's do it. Ruby's game, so I'm game. Let's do it. MN says summer is lasting longer and schools are starting earlier. So I kind of don't want to say this because I don't want to jinx myself. But I'm going to say it anyway, just because we're on the topic of weather. So here was my biggest objection from moving, or my objection to moving to Miami, Florida. I think everybody could guess what that was. I was petrified, and I'm talking about petrified of the hurricanes. I think that's a good, reason, right? But I am used to hurricanes. Obviously, Long Island gets its fair share of storms. Been through Hurricane Sandy, which was a disaster. But supposedly, the past 5 years, it seems as if the hurricanes are changing their course direction, and they're generally speaking, a lot of them are missing Miami, Florida now, which I guess is good for me, but I don't want to jinx it. But I've been noticing that too, and they've been coming more along like the Gulf Coast as opposed to the East Coast on Miami and like Fort Lauderdale. So I guess that's a positive, but watch us have a crazy hurricane season this year after I just said that. Now we got the Chrysler Building straight ahead. One of my favorite buildings. Not as good as the Empire, but it's up there. It's in the high 8s. I wouldn't yet say it cracks the 9s, but it's in the high 8s, maybe like an 8, 9. Yeah, travelers sounds like you're due for a storm. Mimi says, Tom, you're right about the weather. Iowa weather has changed. No spring or fall, just cold or just pure hot. Yeah, I mean, I'm not the only one. I'm not losing my mind, am I? NG, hey, NG, what's up? Says, I moved to Florida from New Jersey, and I was terrified of the reptiles. Oh yeah, that's another thing. So I'll tell you a quick story. I'll tell you a quick story about the reptiles. This stream is going off the rails tonight, but I like it because it's Friday. So in my house, I'm like equidistant between Miami International Airport and Fort Lauderdale. And when I say thousands, I literally mean thousands of these very miniature lizards. I don't think they're iguanas. I think the iguanas are larger. You'll know if you see an iguana. But I have a lot of these little mini lizards that big. And every night I've been hearing this noise coming from the front of my house. So one night I finally get up and I go look. And these lizards have chewed their way through some insulation. So essentially when they installed a new front door in my house, and I think they did a bad job, and they left a teeny gap at the bottom. So I had to fill it with that insulation foam, the foam gun, and I sealed it. And these things ate through it, and they got into the house. So I don't know what I'm going to do about that. I may have to actually go in there with some hydraulic concrete and just make sure that entire thing is sealed off. But they chewed right through the spray foam, that spray insulation. And for the next couple weeks, I've been noticing these mini lizards crawling around my house. Anyway, it'll work itself out. Dan Zeng says, have you ran into an alligator yet? Surprisingly not. So I really don't think there's a lot of alligators in Miami, the downtown Miami. I don't really live in the wetlands sort of location. So it's different. Hey, Jesus Miguel says, Tom, that jobs report that came in, what are your thoughts? Yeah, we were talking about that at the beginning of the stream. So the non-farm payroll numbers came in absolute breathing fire, 538,000, I think. And economists were expecting, I think, right around 238,000, so right under 250,000. So talk about being way off. And it's interesting because we also got a piece of economic data out yesterday. Oh, hold on one second. We also just got a piece of economic data out, I think 2 days ago, about new unemployment claims, and those are actually spiking. So at the same time as we are seeing increased unemployment claims, it seems like the people who are now becoming unemployed are having an easier time re-entering the workforce. So I think it's creating an equilibrium here. So, but the bad news is, I think we are reverting back to a time where the markets perceive good news as bad news and bad news as good news. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Hey, NG, thank you so much for the $5 donation. You're very kind. Thank you for being very kind and nice to me. Says, always enjoy the stream, even though I don't comment often, I'm here every night. Well, I appreciate that, NG. It's always nice to speak to you on the streams. Hopefully you have some good plans for the weekend. And thank you for your support. Captain Smart TV says, what unemployment claims the U.S. is most unsocial county? Could you just, maybe I'm reading the question wrong. Could you repeat it real quick? Andre Almar says, should I move to the U.S. as a software engineer? I mean, we'd love to have you. We'd love to have you. There's definitely a lot of jobs to be a software engineer, but then again, I think you could probably also get a job remote. You know, a lot of companies will probably hire you even to work remote abroad, right? Hey, Carol H is here. Says, happy Friday and good evening. Welcome, Carol. Hope you're well. So here's what I mean, everybody. And again, I said this at the beginning of the stream, but I think it's appropriate to maybe just do a quick review. So after that jobs number that we got today, which came in much, much hotter than expected. So payrolls increased 528,000 in July, with the unemployment rate plummeting to 3.5%, smoking expectations of 258,000 and 3.6% unemployment for the unemployment rate. So here's what I think. And this is not an exact science, this is a good possibility, because the market sold off a little bit, but then they rallied towards the end of the day. I think it's all dependent on the Federal Reserve, and here's what I mean by that. The Federal Reserve is looking for two things. They're looking for wage growth to slow, and they're looking for that core CPI to come down. Now, when we talk about the CPI, obviously the CPI had a 9.1% print, but the Federal Reserve, they more tend to look towards this core CPI, which excludes volatile food and energy costs. I don't agree that they should look at that, but you know, we could all have our difference in opinion. So I think that after getting good economic news, right, I think it's good that 528,000 people got jobs in July. I think everybody would say that's good, unless, you know, there's some sociopaths in the chat. But the concern is that the Fed's going to look at that number and say, oh no, we are nowhere near being done doing quantitative tightening. We are nowhere near done raising interest rates. And I think that was very, well, I think that's probably what's happening, because if you looked at the futures traders are now pricing in an additional 75 basis point rate hike, when it was supposed to be a 50 basis point rate hike. So if that's correct, we'll head into the Grand Central Station right now, by the way. So if that's correct, I gotta put on my inside voice. I feel like I'm screaming when I'm outside, especially when we're near the bagpipes. So if that's correct and we raise interest rates another 75 basis points, that would be 3 months back to back to back 75 basis point rate hikes, which generally the market tends to not like that, because as interest rates go up, a lot of the tech companies that everybody seems to love, the software as a service companies, where they very oftentimes have little earnings right now, but they always have future projected earnings. When you have earnings that are projected in the future, and when interest rates rise, well, that makes the value of your future earnings worth less in today's dollars, if that makes sense. But when interest rates go lower, the present value of those future earnings are worth more. So it tends to hit more rate sensitive stocks. So what do you guys think? Do you think that we're reverting back to a time in the market when good news is bad news, meaning that the Federal Reserve is probably going to stay aggressive with raising interest rates? Or do you think that we're probably thinking into it a little bit?
Attention customers, a reminder, proper wearing of a mask that covers the nose and mouth is required.
Western Mass Dave is like, we're in Grand Central, show us the spot. I'll show you the spot right now, Dave. So check out this mailbox for a minute. Talk about a beautiful mailbox here. Hey, Andrea Talcott says, hey Tom, I love your videos, but I love more how kind you are to your followers. Well, thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate it. Yeah, we just try to have fun here. We try to hang out and unwind after work. So I appreciate you joining, and I appreciate your kind words. And I wish you a very, very restful weekend too. So check this out, everybody. I'm going to try to zoom in. I've been having some camera issues this week, but if you look at this spot right here, right there, it's a teeny black spot at the top right-hand corner of the Grand Central Station. That is the only spot that they left intact when they did the restoration. And essentially, that is how the ceiling used to look. And that is made up of all cigarette and tobacco smoke, because back in the day, you were actually allowed to smoke in the train stations. So just to give you a little bit of an idea, everybody would smoke cigars, smoke cigarettes, and all that tar and that dust and that nastiness would go up and stick to the ceiling. And they never ever took it down, just as a reminder of what the ceiling used to look like before the renovation. So pretty interesting. You guys probably already knew that. Hey, Kent is here. Kent Stocks is raising the interest rates past 6%. Will stabilize the economy at least for the next 18 months. That's my prediction. So Kent, I actually would probably agree with you. So here's sort of my thesis on it. And I'm not saying that I'm going to be right. This is just sort of how I think about it. I think pretty much ever since, hold on one second, all the people in the chat with the Bitcoin, I do appreciate the chats, but we just can't solicit anything in the chat. So don't tell anybody to buy things or stuff like that. That's my only request. You guys can do whatever you want. Just don't like solicit, buy this, buy that, because that could be a little bit of an ethics issue here. So please just respect that. I think the problem is that ever since the 2008 financial crisis, the market has been extremely dependent on the Federal Reserve, meaning the market is addicted to cheap money. It's addicted to artificially low interest rates, and it's addicted to the Federal Reserve printing money. So if we did have a Paul Volcker as Fed chair, what he would do is like, I don't care, I'm getting inflation under control. We're ripping these interest rates to 20%, and that would get inflation under control, but that would probably send the equity markets into a tailspin and we'd be down 50%. But at the end of the day, I've always said this, if you look at who owns the majority of assets in the country, it's roughly the top 5 to 1% of Americans own about 99% of all the assets. Okay, and this is why I say inflation, if inflation is going to continue to print at 10% a year, it's not hurting the wealthy Americans. It's hurting the people who are average, everyday, middle-class Americans, or people who are living paycheck to paycheck. So it's more important, in my opinion, to get inflation under control, because the vast majority of Americans are either middle class or just regular, average, everyday people. They're not ultra high net worth individuals who could care less if inflation's 10%. And then that should normalize the market, or valuations should contract to a normal level. And then you have a new economic cycle that will start. It just seems like we're kicking the can down the road. And I think these little incremental 50 basis point rate hikes, 75 basis point rate hikes is more Fed speak telling the market that, all right, we're going to get more aggressive on raising rates, just so the market will do the vast majority of the pricing in, so the Federal Reserve doesn't have to raise rates, if that makes sense. But again, that's just my opinion. I'm not saying that's it's going to happen. Hey, Mohammed is here. What's up, Mohammed? Good to see you. This is Good Morning, Tom. It's been a while since you've been broadcasting. Yes. Good to be back. NBA Elias is Volcker appointed by Jimmy Carter, but recession began under Ronald Reagan, says NBA Elias. Dan Zhang says, Tom, I just saw my friend walk past you. Well, good. What's up to your friend? Good to see him. That's too funny. I actually have gotten some interesting emails where people will be like, dude, I just found your stream, but as I was watching your previous streams, I think this is me. And they take a screenshot of themselves and send it to me. I think that's kind of funny. Fred X says, Tom, the Chrysler Building 8-9. Yeah, today it's looking like an 8-9. I think the Chrysler Building's an 8.9 today just because I'm so hyped up about the Empire State Building. Hey, Road Dog 41 says, is the Fed going back to transitory? Yeah, maybe we'll get a, well, so, okay, that's a good point. So I want everybody to go and watch the interview with Minneapolis Fed President Neil Kashkari. And this interview, first I'll show you how beautiful the ceiling is here. But that particular interview actually happened on July 31st when Neil Kashkari appeared on Face the Nation. So if you open another window while you're on the stream, or if you click away from the stream a little bit, watch that interview with Neil Kashkari on Face the Nation when it relates to his thoughts about the long-term trajectory of rates, or I would say the velocity at which the Federal Reserve is going to raise rates. Because at the conclusion of the last FOMC meeting, Fed Chair Jerome Powell actually came off to me as a little bit dovish. He did raise interest rates 75 basis points, but he says now the Fed is going to revert back to being data dependent, which means if that CPI comes down a little bit, hold on, so let me open the door here, which to me it means if the CPI comes down a little bit, well then maybe they'll back off raising interest rates. But Neil Kashkari on Face the Nation, he was essentially giving off completely different vibes. And in which case he said every single piece of economic data and economic news that comes out is coming in above our expectations, meaning we need to get a lot more aggressive on raising interest rates. So on one hand, you have Fed Chairman Jerome Powell saying one thing. On the other hand, you have Neil Kashkari saying the other. So I think I would just play it a little bit cautious here, but I have increased my exposure over the past couple weeks in a select few names because earnings have been good, right? At the end of the day, if you're going to invest in the individual stocks, think about the actual fundamental business. If earnings are coming in good, if revenues are good, if gross margins aren't getting compressed, well, I think you should own these businesses here. But I don't know, that's my 2 cents. Yogi says, I just looked up Kashkari. He's got a powerful look in his eyes. Yeah, Neil Kashkari is a very successful guy, and a lot of people, a lot of economists look to him for direction. But check out that interview on Face the Nation. I thought that was very telling. I think I may have put it in the link, or it's in the Nightbot or something like that. Wow, everybody check this out. So this is 405 Lexington Avenue. Check that out. We are directly, I guess you could say under the Chrysler Building. Beautiful. Hey, Austin City Limits is Tom. What do you think about the 2-year yield and the 10-year yield? Will that spell long-term recession or short-term recession? Well, I think the yield curve is getting increasingly inverted, which is definitely not good. And one of the things I noticed when it relates to that US 10-year Treasury yield is that generally speaking, like today, I think we had a little bit of a rally in that 10-year US Treasury yield. In which case, at the beginning, at the opening of the market, we sold off a little bit. So usually, if you see that 10-year yield drop, so if you see cash going into the bond market, suppressing rates, then cash will usually flow into the stock market as well. But if you see an uncontrolled sell-off in the debt market and yields spike, because again, we'll just review really quickly, there's an inverse correlation between prices and yields. So as you have a sell-off in the debt market, yields will spike, and usually stocks will come down. So the yield curve is inverted. There's a lot of depressing economic news out there, but I also think there's a lot of conflicting economic news out there. But at the end of the day, as long as companies continue to report decent earnings, I think there's still going to be ways to generate alpha in this market. Even though this earnings season there was a lot of, I would say, hawkish talk by some of the executives or C-levels at particular companies, giving some revenue guidance that was a little bit light. They're giving some profitability guidance that was a little bit light. But at the end of the day, a lot of these companies are still being able to maintain their high gross margins, because the number one thing, and we've been reviewing about this, the number one thing that I wanted to look for this earnings season is if a lot of companies are saying, hey, inflationary pressures are really eating into our gross margins. That's only happened around like the consumer discretionary, consumer staples names. Even look at a company like Tesla. They were able to maintain, I think, like a 29% gross margin. If you compare that to like a GM or a Ford, those are single-digit margins there. So, I don't know, not to be too overly optimistic. Hey, Carnan2 says hi. Hi to you, good to see you. DN is here, welcome DN. So this is Pershing Square. You can see all the pigeons up here. Hey, Christy F says, I've been waiting to join for a while. It's finally payday. Wow, very nice. So I wonder why the Bank of America Tower is lit up the same color as the Empire. Is that because the Mets were playing today or something like that? Jesus Miguel says, I am baffled by the decline in labor force participation. Peak at 62.4 in March and has continuously fallen nearly continuously since. Despite tons of job openings, lots of jobs added, dwindling cash balances. I think that's the comment of the night. And we got the Bitcoin guy back again. But I think that's the comment of the night, right? And oftentimes on the stream we'll say, the government will always point towards, the unemployment rate's at all-time lows. And it's not just the Biden administration that does it. The Republicans do it too when they're in office. But we know the labor force participation rate is a better gauge for the health of the labor market. And to your point, I don't want to mispronounce your name. Is it Jesus or Jesus? I don't want to. Feel free to correct me if I'm horrible with the pronunciation. And just excuse me. I'm not doing it intentionally, is what I'm saying. But essentially what he's saying is like, look, there's more job openings than there are people looking for work in this country. Why aren't people going back to work? Well, I think we are in a new dichotomy of the way people live, work, and essentially operate their lives. And I think the pandemic has taught a lot of people, you could do freelance work, you can open up an own small business, and you could work from home. So I think people are still sitting on pretty decent cash balances. I think a lot of people are maybe doing like gig economy jobs, and they value their time at home with their kids more than commuting to an office or something like that. That's really the only thing I could think of, but what do you guys think? Spontaneous Crusade says, Tom, what's your favorite restaurant in New York City? Becco. But I will give you guys an insight into a fantastic new restaurant that just opened up. That's my good friend runs the restaurant. The name is called Mel's, so M-E-L-S. So if you're in New York City, please check out Mel's, M-E-L-S. You're not going to be disappointed. It's a fantastic restaurant. And it's located in Chelsea Market. So beautiful place. If you're in New Jersey, take the train, come to Mel's. It's no big deal. You're going to have a good time. Spontaneous Crusade says, what street is Becco on? I think it's on, I should know that, right? I think it's on Restaurant Row. If you just look up Becco, B-E-C-C-O, Restaurant Row, I think it's 46th Street. Maybe somebody could help me out here. Yeah, Melissa 2087 says you love Chelsea Market. Chelsea Market's fantastic. Chelsea Market is fantastic. Yeah, Andrew says, Tom, significant job gains could help stabilize wage growth. Oh, is it 56th Photos from around New York? I don't know. I don't know. You could be right. Photos is better than I am at this stuff. So Melissa 2087 says, Tom, what kind of food is it, Mel's? So it's interesting. It's a pizza restaurant, but it's not what you think. So totally get, wow, these are beautiful American flags here. It's a pizza restaurant, but it's very, very traditional, like fancy Italian pizza. And they have very, very good like appetizer dishes, seafoods. I would try the stuffed clams there. Look at some of the pictures online. It's a very, very nice restaurant, and the desserts are very good too. So they have their own pastry chef. But yeah, I'm probably not doing a good job explaining it, but I can guarantee you it's very good. Somebody says, do I like Spumoni Gardens in Brooklyn? I've actually never been there. I've actually never been there before. Dan Zhang says, yeah, good idea. Let's have a fans meetup when Tom hits 50K. So you know what I was thinking about doing? I was thinking about doing like for people who live in New York or people who live in Miami. Not a big fan of the loud car exhaust. I was thinking about maybe doing something where I could rent out my WeWork for like 2 hours at like between 6 to 7. I could tell you guys the address, you could come up and we could do, just have, maybe have, some drinks, pound a couple waters, cater some Beckos or something like that. And we'll just have a chat about finance, the economy, really anything. Just sort of like a, networking session for all like the bankers here, the tech guys and girls, or really anybody, just to sort of hang out. I was thinking about trying to do that, but that's in the works. Because with my WeWork pass, I think I can allocate the entire, like an entire section of the WeWork for like an hour event. Maybe we'll do that one night, but I think that's a little bit of a ways down the road. Robert says loud exhaust should be illegal. You know what, dude, it's every time I hear a loud exhaust here in New York, it feels like I'm back in Miami, because Miami is ridiculous with that stuff. Miami is insane with the loud exhaust. NBA Elias is the share of working age population in their prime of life, ages 25 to 54, is quite stable at 82.4%. If that was 62.1% participation, it would be worrisome. Interesting. You know what? I'm going to take a screenshot of your comment there. Give me a sec. I want to unpack that a little bit when I get home. Spontaneous is like the loud exhaust is such a waste. I don't know. I guess some people like it. I don't know. I'm not a big, you guys know me, I'm not a big car guy. I don't have a car, I don't drive. But I think if I were to ever get a car, it would probably be a Tesla. It would probably be a Tesla. So here's what I'm waiting for. I think maybe when I'm in my early 30s, I'll get a car. And I think that's going to align perfectly because the battery technology is probably going to be really good then. You're probably going to be able to go 1,000 miles on a single charge. So that's what I'm waiting for. MN says, what is the curved building right in front of you? I'm not sure the exact name of it, to be quite honest. Maybe Photos from Around New York does, or Dan Zhang, but this is a very unique building here, you're right. Ruby Falcone says, time check 10:25. Oh my gosh, we've almost been streaming for 2 hours already. Time flies. Hey, new rules says all my fellow are out in shape. Are out of shape. Out in shape. Hey, Miami walking and driving tours. What's up? Says great choice, Tom. And the Teslas are actually very fun to drive. Yeah, so I think I would bet that in 5 years a Tesla is probably going to have 1,000-mile range or greater. What do you guys think? So Photos from Around New York, we wanted to ask you what this building is called. The one right here that says Grace with the curved facade. I'm not sure what it's called, so I wanted your expertise on that. Hey, Marcelo Gill says, hey Tom, what's up bro? Bryant Park and 6th Avenue are my favorite places in New York City despite the trash. As I mentioned, manufacturing PMI at 56%. By Tom article was good. Oh, thank you so much, Marcelo. Appreciate it. Yeah, so what Marcelo's talking about, I do write a free financial newsletter for everybody, and we will be putting out the next issue of the Behind the Street newsletter on Tuesday. So if you want to sign up and get my thoughts on the financial markets every other Tuesday, if you type !news, NEWS in the chat, the Nightbot will drop the link. Just punch in your email, and it's absolutely free, and you'll be able to receive all of my equity research at no cost. Hey, Carnar2 is watching from South America. Well, thank you for watching. Hopefully you're enjoying the stream tonight. So check out the ball that they drop on New Year's in Times Square. So I do have some good news though to share with you guys. Usually every night we get those spam bots with the pornography spam bots, which are horrible. But now it seems like they've converted over to shilling Bitcoin. I would rather take the Bitcoin spam bots over the latter. So I think we're progressing here. Let me know if you guys agree. Hey, Bagels and Walks, what's up? Good to see you. Welcome. Tub of popcorn says the Ford trucks have an even bigger battery, and you can haul stuff too. Ford Lightning, almost fast as Mustang GT, best of both worlds. So that's true, but I don't think I would want to drive a truck in New York. I don't know. I'm gonna have to consider that, to be honest. So check out the view of the Empire State Building from here. Fantastic. Yeah, Dow Jones is BTC and Ethereum scam way better in the chat. Yeah, Dan's like, it's small progress. Slowly but surely we're getting there, everybody. I mean, I've been programming the Nightbot to try to help us out best we can, so I'm doing everything I can, trust me. But whoever's creating the bots create them so fast that I just can't possibly program the Nightbot to catch all the little nuances. So apologies to everybody. I'm doing the best I can. Hey, Paul is here, says, g'day from Australia, welcome. So Paul, Atlassian reported a killer blowout earnings report Thursday night. Stock rallied hard, 16%. So love the Aussies, big shout out to all the Australian viewers. Australian software company Atlassian, ticker symbol TEAM, beating on both the top and the bottom line, going gangbusters into the close on Thunder volume. So we'll walk up 6th Avenue. We're actually about to pass my old office. I used to work right here, 45th Street and 6th. Two Harbors, says Tom, Giants, Jets, Mets, or Yankees? So I'm not a big football guy, I'm not a big baseball guy, but if I had to choose, I would say Giants and Yankees. What about you? I would say Giants and Yankees if I had to choose too, but I don't really watch football, I don't really watch baseball, but let me know what you think. Hey, Atomic Skittles says, do you think it's smart to invest in real estate right now? I think it's always smart to invest in real estate. I think it just depends on your personal financial situation, right? It doesn't matter if the market is at an all-time high or the markets are crashing. I think real estate is very nuanced. So if you find a deal that works for you specifically and your financials and you run the cash flow analysis and the deal's gonna cash flow, you should probably do the deal. I think where a lot of people can tend to lose money in real estate is when they start comparing themselves to their friends or their neighbors and say, oh, my friend from high school just bought a home or a duplex, so that means I have to go out and buy one. You know, your friend has nothing to do with your life. Your friend has a totally different job, totally different set of circumstances, so But the only thing I could say about that is run the numbers based upon your debt to income levels. And if the deal works, if the numbers work, I would do the deal. Hey, Paul, thank you so much for the $1 donation. You were way too kind. And thank you for being here. We appreciate it. So it looks like there's a really cool pop-up shop here at 1155 Avenue of the Americas. Look at how cool this is. Wow. Oh, it looks like maybe they're taking photos with the designer here. Wow, that's awesome. Deborah's like, I don't think it's a shop, it's probably an art exhibit. Yeah, I think you're probably right. Yeah, it looks like there's some big time designer here or something. This looks pretty cool. Yeah, it looks cool. Dalton says the two people who helped make the world go round. Awesome, good to see you, Dalton. Yeah, wasn't that cool? We've been running into some very weird things. I wouldn't say weird things, but very cool things, I'd say, on the stream. Maybe we'll run into the rollerbladers. Maybe we'll come full circle and run into the rollerbladers again. So a quantitative trading shop here, D.E. Shaw, used to work in my building. Well, I think they still do. I used to work there. So we had D.E. Shaw, I think, on the 8th floor. And Jeff Bezos used to work for D.E. Shaw. So right when Jeff Bezos graduated college, he went on to be a hedge fund analyst in New York City at D.E. Shaw. And it's sort of funny how Amazon came about. And you could watch this in one of Jeff Bezos' many interviews on the internet. And he said he had this idea when he was a young hedge fund analyst to open a bookstore, like an online bookstore. So he took his boss out for a walk in Central Park. And his boss, obviously, David E. Shaw, who created the hedge fund. And he took David E. Shaw for a walk in Central Park. And he's like, you know what, we're making a lot of money. I'm making a lot of money at the hedge fund. I really like being an analyst, but I think I'm going to quit the job to open an online bookstore. To which D.E. Shaw, or David E. Shaw, replied. He said, you know, Jeff, I think that would be a really good idea, but for somebody that doesn't already have a really good job. Meaning, why would you go try to start something else when you're making a couple $100,000 as a hedge fund analyst? But thankfully, Jeff Bezos did quit the job and he started Amazon, and it is what it is today. But a little bit of a cool story there. Marcelo says, you speak so much and no drinking water. How? We're going to have to hydrate. We're going to have to pound some waters here in a minute. Yeah, Liz says, wow, didn't know that. No, it's true. So type in, if you watch the interview, it's a really, really inspiring interview by Jeff Bezos. Sometimes I'll replay that before I go to sleep or right when I wake up. If you just type in Jeff Bezos, D.E. Shaw, he'll tell you the story. And that's, you know, he wanted to run it by his boss to say, hey, what do you think? I think he actually was a very early investor in Amazon, David Shaw, I think. Don't quote me on that part, but that is how Amazon came about. Hey, Business Mail says, never thought online books would work. When I was a kid in the 70s, we got books by mail. Never thought to not go to a bookstore. It's kind of crazy. You know, and now everybody always thinks about Amazon as a pure play e-commerce business. I do pay attention to the e-commerce part of the business, but the more important and more lucrative opportunity is their Amazon Web Services or AWS side of the house. And we talk about this ad nauseum on the stream. I think AWS alone is going to be $1 trillion business just off of the cloud computing unit alone. And we got the Bitcoin guy back again. Rebel Poet says, wasn't there a relationship between Barnes and Nobles and Amazon early on? That I'm not sure. I would actually be curious to see if there was, to be honest. Hey. Manuel, good to see you. Yeah, somebody said eBay before Amazon for sure. All right, so we're coming up on Radio City Music Hall. Lots of traffic tonight in Manhattan. Hey, Martin, says Tom, you should pound down an ice cream, a soft ice cream cone at the truck. We may do that. I'm a little bit sketched out by those things, though. Not to deter anybody from going to them, but I am a little bit sketched out. You know, not for nothing, I'd much rather just go to McDonald's. Look at this guy going all gangbusters here in the little smart car, blowing the red light. Manuel says, Manuel, I think you have to post your comment again. Jonathan Chavez says, what do you do for a living? I am in enterprise software sales or tech sales. So I sell software and hardware into the Fortune 500, Fortune 50 companies. So this is Adele's, which is the best halal food in the city by a long, long shot. So the line is probably 2 or 3 hours long right now, but I would very, very much suggest you check it out. This is probably the best place that I've ever been. Road Dog says, is Walmart food ever going to do delivery? I think they do delivery, don't they? If I'm not mistaken, doesn't Walmart already do delivery? I could be wrong, but I think they may already do delivery there. Somebody says, what does halal mean? So I think it's a specific way they may prepare the meat. So it's sort of like Jewish people have to eat kosher, and I believe Muslims have to eat halal food. I don't know the technical definition, but the only thing I know is that it's good. It's some of my favorite food ever. But I think it's the way that they prepare the particular type of food that makes it kosher, or that makes it halal, I believe. So here we're crossing paths with Nürburger Berman. My friend's actually a VP at Nürburger Berman. And Marcelo, if you're still in the chat, Marcelo, here we go, we're walking past UBS. So Marcelo, I think Marcelo's daughter is an investment banker here. So I always like to point that out. Marcelo likes when we walk by this. Yeah, there we go. Marcelo's like, wow, UBS. Fantastic location. I think this is probably the most strategically placed building in the city, because 2 blocks up you have the Halal Guys near the Hilton Hotel, and then 2 blocks straight down this way you have Adele's Famous. So any of the analysts or investment bankers, you have the best of both halal worlds right outside your door. So that's a blessing in and of itself. Okay, Lemonade says, Tom, the meat is humanely slaughtered. That's what halal is. Yeah, I knew it was something how it's, the animal has to be killed in a certain way. I'm not too big on the specific ways, but the food is fantastic. It's some of the best food in New York. In relation to, like, you want a cheap meal that's like 10 or 12 bucks. Halal food is definitely a go-to. It's fantastic. Martin says, let's keep talking about the food. I have the munchies. Well, I'm glad your Friday night's off to a good start. So this used to be, I think this used to be the Financial Times building. It used to have the sign FT on the top, but I think Financial Times actually moved out of this building, I think. Business mail says halal means must be killed in a certain way and healthy before slaughter. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. You know, all this talk about halal, I may have to, nah, I can't get it tonight, actually. I think the line would still be too long after we conclude the stream. Hey, Martin says, every day is Friday here, Tom. Liz says, my company owns that Hilton right there. Really? So what would that be, Liz? Isn't that Hilton? So, Liz, you work for Hilton? Nice. All right, let's continue to walk up. So MoMA is right here, right down this block. So the good news about this Hilton is that after being closed down during the pandemic for well over a year, it is now open and ready for business. And I think they actually took the time to do some renovations too, so it's a nice hotel for sure. Everybody, here we are, 432 Park Avenue, absolutely beautiful building. The only thing is, a lot of the tenants complain about the building. There's a lot of class action lawsuits against the real estate developers. Supposedly the building shakes back and forth. The elevators don't work sometimes. There's electrical outages. So big mess going on in that building, but I think it holds the record for the most expensive real estate listing in the city, or in the world, I think, at $180 million. So if you guys want to chip in, maybe we could all, you know, maybe stream there for a day or something if we all pool our money here. Hey, LilYell69 says, hey Tom, I'm out with my girlfriend right now, but wanted to say hi and stay safe. Hey, well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Well, enjoy your Friday night out. Be safe as well, and enjoy your weekend. Always appreciate you joining. You know, we were talking about that blistering hot jobs number we got today. That came in right at about 528,000 jobs added when economists were expecting only 228,000. And then obviously I refer back to my joke that we always say on the stream, that there's two particular professions that you can always be wrong and keep your job. And that is one, a meteorologist if you're reporting the weather, and number two, if you're an economist, because economists always get everything wrong. So there's the corny joke for the night. Hope you guys enjoy it. And the Bitcoin guy is back. Hey, Tori says, hey Tom, thanks for keeping it real. Good to see you, Tori. Yeah, Western Mass Davis' amazing jobs report. So that begets the question, are we going back to an environment where good news is bad news and bad news is good news? And we reviewed that already, but I guess we'll say it again. If we get a good jobs report, that may influence the Fed to go gangbusters and continue to raise rates, which usually is not good for stocks. It may force them to do more quantitative easing, in which case that means they will allow additional mortgage-backed securities and additional U.S. Treasuries to roll off the balance sheet, thus contracting the money supply, making liquidity dry up, making stock prices go lower. But if we start getting bad news, if we start having jobs numbers miss the mark, that could potentially allow the Federal Reserve to take a step back and say, okay, the rate hikes are working, it's slowing the economy, this core CPI is coming down, and now we may be able to start to put a pause on rate hikes. But it doesn't look like that's happening right now. But here's the super optimistic news. And again, this is my opinion in a particular possible scenario that could play out here. And here's what that is, and I've said it before, but as midterm elections sweep through, we know that historically, stock market performance during a midterm election year is almost always negative to flat. There's the Mustang again. We just saw that Mustang on 42nd Street. So midterm elections are rolling through. Usually stock market performance is poor during midterm election years, but if you look at the data, the best environment for equity market performance is when you have a Democrat in the White House and Republicans controlling both houses of Congress. And we very well may get that scenario as we go through midterm elections, because if we get a complete clean sweep, or as many people are calling it, a red wave, we could have Republicans totally take control of both houses of Congress. President Joe Biden is our president. He is a Democrat, which historically usually leads to abnormally positive stock market returns. Now, again, I want to clarify, when I say that, I'm not saying I want that scenario to happen. I'm just reporting the facts. So if that scenario happens, look back throughout history, stocks tend to perform better when a Democrat is president and when Republicans control both houses of Congress. That's very possible. So in 2023 and 2024, if we get this quote-unquote red wave, we could be off to the races here for stocks. And the reason why I say that is because by that time, inflation should be coming down here. At least the core CPI should be coming down a little bit, in which case maybe, just maybe, the Federal Reserve could even go back to quantitative easing, in which case that would give us a really nice push into the presidential elections in 2024. But again, that's just my opinion. That's all speculation. Don't take that as fact. So we are on 57th Street, Billionaires Row in Manhattan, and we are overlooking my two personal favorite buildings on the block. So this one is 157, and the one right next to it is Central Park Tower, absolutely beautiful. And these are the two Billionaires Row buildings, but 157 actually was the original Billionaire Row building that kicked everything off. But one of the newest additions is sitting right here at Central Park Tower. If you move over to the right, this is the Essex House, which is a 5-star hotel that is located right at 59th Street in Central Park South. It is the JW Marriott Essex House, which is a fantastic, fantastic hotel if you want to stay there. Martin says, Tom, would you consider a China/Little Italy stroll, or is that too far out of the way? So I would consider it tomorrow night, and I think we're actually going to do it tomorrow night when we head down towards the Staten Island Ferry. We're probably not going to be able to do it tonight, in all honesty, because we're a little bit too far, and I do have to keep a close-ish distance to Penn Station. But I promise I will keep a mental note, and we will be walking through there tomorrow night on the stream as we make our way to the Staten Island Ferry. Martin says, Tom, is Trump Tower near? It's near-ish. I would say it's a little bit near. Well, it depends on which Trump Tower you're talking about, because the original Trump Tower is on 5th Avenue, right? That's the one I think everybody knows. But we are actually going to be walking past another Trump Tower, which is the Trump International Hotel and Residences, which is a 5-star hotel located at 1 Central Park West. 1 Central Park West. So we will be seeing that one tonight. Ruby Falcone says, time check 10:50. Oh my gosh, where did the time go? But everybody, if you're enjoying the stream so far tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and hit the subscribe button if you are new to the channel, because we do these live streams about 5 days per week between New York City and Miami. We'd love to have you aboard. Let me see here. Lil Yell 69 says, have you thought about Brooklyn or a Queens stream, Tom? So I've thought about it, but it's very hard for me to do a Brooklyn or a Queens stream, mainly because I get off of work. Literally, right as I start streaming, that's when I get off of work. So for me to, travel all the way to Brooklyn or Queens, I think it's going to take a long time. I think that car may be on fire. It's either on fire or it has a horrible exhaust problem. In which case it's polluting the city. This is not good. It's definitely not good. But yeah, I think maybe on the weekends we'll try to do some Brooklyn and Queens streams. Also, I've been trying to just stay in Manhattan. You know, just I don't really want any headaches. Because usually, I mean, you guys know, I'm streaming at, 10, 11 o'clock at night. And, sometimes I don't really want to be walking around, some specific neighborhoods of Brooklyn or Queens at 11 at night. Not to say that it's dangerous, but, after working, 9 hours, and I think it's just going to take a little bit too long, but maybe we'll try it on the weekends for sure. Wow, check out that view of Central Park Tower. My God, absolutely gorgeous here. Wow, that's awesome.
I'm very kind of if I'm talking to you, I'll put my arm around you. Yeah.
Además, tú deberías llevarte un teléfono para que tú siempre lo tengas. Y en el momento que esa persona
Wow, the buildings are looking fantastic. I almost got a little bit starstruck there. It was so beautiful. I think I'm starting to shed a little bit of a tear here. It's so beautiful. Austin City Limits, a super tall building. Hey, Xavier says, hey Tom, while you're up around Columbus Circle, would you carry on to West 63rd and Broadway and show us the whole street and how to get to Sesame Street, says Xavier. So you know what we could probably do if the phone doesn't die? We could take a look at Lincoln Center. We'll do that. We'll take a look at Lincoln Center. And depending on the battery level, we'll do it. We'll do it. Hey, a different take. What's up? Says if we have to choose, what is better for the masses? Good market reports or reducing inflation? I think it's reducing inflation. It's reducing inflation. And here's why I say that. And again, nobody wants a ripping bull market more than me. But I think you need to do it in a way where the Federal Reserve isn't juicing the markets. Because if you have inflation running at 10% a year in the United States, it's absolutely unacceptable, full stop. Unacceptable, because the vast majority of people in America do not own assets that are being inflated, right? I mean, Americans own assets, but in relation to what the 1%, what the billionaires and the ultra high net worth people own, they own about 99% of all US equities and real estate. The bottom 80% owns the remainder. So if you take that into consideration and you say, okay, maybe you're a household where you have a $500 monthly food budget, right? You go to the grocery store, maybe you can go out to eat, once or twice a month, like just normal, regular, living good American. However, if inflation is printing at 10% a year, well, that changes the entire game. That changes the entire game, and that's going to, make people make some really difficult choices here as to, okay, do I pay my car payment this month, or do I put food on the table? Right. So I think that it's critical to get inflation under control. If the equity markets have to plummet 50%, you got to bring inflation back to 2%. Because if inflation's running at 10% a year, well, half your money's gone in 10 years. So, I mean, that's my take on it. And again, that's my personal take, but that's definitely up for debate, but that's my personal take. Yeah, Mike C says 10% inflation doubles prices every 7 years. Yep. Dan Zhang says, what are your thoughts on this saying you can make money during a bull market, but you can become rich during a recession? I agree with it, because you could actually buy good businesses. Because here's the thing, you have to understand like beta, and usually 9 out of 10 stocks will follow the trajectory of the market. So it doesn't matter if a company is reporting blowout numbers, it doesn't matter if a company is reporting ridiculous numbers during a recession. If the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, and the Dow is down, those stocks are generally going to be down as well. So what that creates is a mispricing opportunity in the market, and that's why there's always that old saying, buy businesses, don't buy the market. So if you have a particular company that is continuously compounding out their earnings 25% per annum, they have high return on equity, they are maintaining their pre-tax and after-tax margins, I would just buy the company regardless of the depressed prices, because as you have an economic upturn, those stocks are going to go up 5 to 10 times more than the average one on the indices. So usually it'll create an opportunity for mispricing in the market, just because of the fact that 8 out of the 10 stocks will follow the indice. So I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. All right, everybody, we made it to 59th Street, Columbus Circle. And we are actually standing across from the other Trump Tower. But this one is the hotel and residences right here. And then these two buildings are the Deutsche Bank Towers, formerly known as the Time Warner Centers. Yeah, Austin city limits is, I don't think in 10% inflation will last. I don't think so either. I mean, we've been talking about that. Commodities are rolling over here, which is good. Look at crude oil. If you look at the futures, look at ticker symbol CL. We're at 85 bucks. In March, we were at 130. Okay, so I think that's probably going to show up in the CPI sooner rather than later. But here's where there's still a concern. We're still seeing wage pressures. So this wage price spiral is still alive and well in America, because look what we just got today. Look what the piece of economic news we just got out today. Non-farm payrolls came out, and we added over 500,000 jobs, which is good, right? But here's why it's also not good. Because if you look at wage growth, that also surged. So average hourly earnings also jumped 0.5% last month, and they jumped about 5.2% from a year ago. So year over year, wages are up about 5%. So if wages start to stagnate and maybe come down, that's also a big factor in the CPI too. So it's sort of that economic theory of the wage price spiral. So everybody's like, oh, I'm making 5% more, this is great, but you're sort of negative 5% factoring in inflation, right? So, hey Carson, good to see you. Says, hey Tom, hopping on to catch the end of the stream. Happy Friday to you, Carson, good to see you. Dan Zhang says, I'm glad I didn't buy a Prius 2 months ago because of the high prices. Yeah, it's funny, and so let's talk about market psychology for a minute, if we may. So this is outside of the Trump International Hotel and Tower. So usually when we see articles in the New York Post, on the front page of the New York Times, or the Wall Street Journal, or Barron's, or even just, I would say, videos or news coverage of your local news agency covering rent prices are going insane, gas prices are going insane, inflation is running wild. Usually once that particular type of news hits the market, you should probably start taking the other side of that trade, unwinding your oil bets, right? And we're writing about that in the Behind the Street newsletter that I send you guys every other Tuesday. So if you want to read that newsletter, if you type !news, NEWS in the chat, click the link that the Nightbot drops, because you'll be able to read all my equity research for free. But usually, generally speaking, whenever you have everybody saying something is going to continue, inflation is going to continue to spiral out of control, gas is going to $200 a gallon, or oil is going to $200 a barrel, then you should probably start to ease back and take the other side of that trade and slowly start to rotate back. Check out this roach. slowly start to rotate back into some of the other very good, solid tech companies that had their valuations compressed because of PE compression due to rising interest rates. This is 220 Central Park South. This is the, I think Ken Griffin from Citadel Securities owns the a unit in this building. Yeah, Gregory's like $200 a gallon, yeah. A little bit over, I meant to say there was a report that came out. There was a report that came out from Bank of America that said the worst case scenario for oil is $200 a barrel. And right there you're like, yeah, okay, yeah, it's done. Let's call it a day on oil. But yeah, it's interesting how those things work out, right? Usually, and just look what happened. Ooh, another roach. Just look what happened during 2020 and 2021 when, everybody was all obsessed with these nonsense garbage companies like the meme stocks and like the doji dog coins and all this nonsense, right? That was the top of the market. That was peak irrational exuberance there. So I think that's always good to keep in mind, just where the general consensus is and how you can position yourself to capitalize off of maybe being a contrarian trader or an investor. Yeah, Mike Cease's billionaire roach. The roach probably has a higher net worth than me. Wow, look at this beautiful view here. Central Park Tower, amongst the clouds, beautiful. Austin City Limits is Tom, what do you think about the supply chain with the shortage of truck drivers? So they say to deliver goods to businesses. Well, I think you're going to continue to see the broader supply chain. I don't think we're going to have enough time to go to Lincoln Center. I think my phone's going to die and I need it to get back on the train. But we'll head back up here Sunday, don't worry. I think you're going to continue to see global supply chains be a little bit rocky due to China's zero COVID policy. And the reason why I'm saying this is because that is what a lot of the respondents are saying during the ISM Purchasing Managers Index that just came out this week, both in the service sector and the manufacturing sector. So it's not coming out of my mouth, it's coming out of their mouth. They're like, it's very difficult to run a business with the different lockdowns there. Now, it's up for debate. I know a lot of people email me. They say, look, the lockdowns over there in China are necessary. I respect everybody's opinions. I absolutely do. I'm just saying what I think could potentially happen just because that's what the respondents are saying in that Institute for Supply Management PMI report. Well, look at the view of Billionaires Row here. Beautiful view. But if you guys enjoyed the stream tonight, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. If you enjoyed the stream and you want to join us tomorrow, almost a car accident, thank God that didn't happen. If you want to join us tomorrow, we will be live at 8:30. So if you want to join us tomorrow, if you had a good time tonight, come back tomorrow. We'd love to hang out. We'd love to talk to you guys. So yeah, we will be live tomorrow, 8:30 at night. I want to thank MBA Elias. I want to thank Lady O, Photos from Around New York, Liz, Carson, I appreciate you. Line Sync, Dalton. Mohammed, thank you for joining. I appreciate it. Mohammed R, thank you so much. Road Dog, Gregory, Marcos, the Mighty Bull, NMB 045, much appreciated. Austin City Limits, Brad's Brain. I'll put down the camera here. So everybody, just so you know, we will be back to our regular scheduled programming of the Behind the Street newsletter. So if you guys have not signed up, maybe if you're new to this channel, if you're new to the stream, if you scan the QR code on your screen, scan the QR code and punch in your email address, you will receive all of my equity research 100% free every other Tuesday. So the newsletter, I give my takes on not only the US equity market, but emerging markets, real estate, fixed income, cryptocurrencies, and the like. So if you scan the QR code and punch in your email address, you will be signed up to receive that for free. So everybody, I'm signing off to the Mighty Bull. Have a good night wherever you are. There's always a bull market somewhere. You just need to know where to look. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Be safe. Stay optimistic. And you could do anything you want this weekend. You guys could do whatever you want. I give you permission to do whatever you want. The only thing you can't do is quit. Just don't quit. That's all I ask.